the Yardbirds or something like that. Good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. It is today is October 8th, 2021. And these are interesting times. That's by the way, I'm Jay Delancey, alias Vote Checker. It's Friday, so I've got my my favorite Hawaiian shirt on. Anyway, so a little festive, but anyway, here we are. Sorry about the lateness. We're hoping to get this thing done at 10, but had a highly technical meeting with some smart guys. They're a lot smarter than me, so I had to sit down and really listen to them and figure out what's going on. And there's a lot of moving parts here. However, I want to catch you up on what's the latest in North Carolina's continuing saga of elections and the election, what shall we call it? The constitutional fight. Yes, I'm distracted while I'm getting my computer up to share screens. There's a constitutional fight going on after yesterday. Some North Carolina legislators, and we'll have a picture of it up on our future on the podcast. It'll be the full podcast of this later today. But for now, I'm going to bring you up to speed on it. Yesterday, our state legislature, the Freedom Caucus, chaired by Keith Kidwell, among others, did what the State Board of Elections would call a publicity stunt. And what they did was had a drawing, and they drew out of the 100 counties, they drew a county out of a hat and announced that they were going to get into that county and look at their material. And this is very hopeful information. And I will go over a couple of things with you today, Lord willing, creek don't rise. Let's see if I have that law up there. I do not. So I'll probably crash my computer here by launching a web browser on it. But I want to show you what we're looking at, and this could be tricky. So I'm going to stop sharing my computer screen on this long enough to see if I can get to the right screen for my audience. But meanwhile, I'll be talking about it. There is a legal procedure that the North Carolina state legislature can use to get the information they need from the usual suspects, and that would be the State Board of Elections. Now, the question is, how bad do they want this information? So what we're going to look at is, I'm going to show you the statutory authority by which they are asking for this information. Asking rather politely, I might add, but it's kind of humorous because this is what we've been telling lawmakers for quite a while. You already have this authority. You do not need to pass a law or anything like that. You just need to start asking questions. And everything will unfold from there. And it looks like that's what they're doing. I'm going to show you the statute as soon as I get my web browser to launch. I'll tell you right now, it's NCGS 120, which is now one of my favorite chapters of law in North Carolina General Statute 120 I want to say 19.2 and 19.4 as I'm stalling to get this up. Of course, it's going to take a while. What that gives the legislature the right to do is to ask for anything they want to ask for. They should be able to get it. It's a fact that they can get it. Easy, but they can get it. And the way they do this is with a committee. And the committee has to buy off on it. Whoops. Okay, about ready to show some information here. Okay, what I will show in the screen cast of this. Oh, Lordy. Okay, apologize for the delays here. What the real issue is going to be is the law itself. And I'm going to find the law and show it to you, but I want to show people who watch it on screen what we're able to share and how you can find it yourself. So with much delay and boring television, as they say, I'm going to share the screen. And those of you listening, it's just the legislature's homepage website. It's ncleg.gov. And there's a tab on there that is called Bills and Laws. And you pull that down and it says General Statutes and General Statutes Table of Contents. And that's what I want to go to today, just because we can. And try and show anybody watching the subsequent video of this how to get whatever it is they want to find in the law. Right now, our favorite chapter is the election law. It's NC General Statute 163. But today, vying for the first runner-up of our favorite law is Chapter 120, which is the chapter on General Assembly and how they operate. Now, what we have here in Chapter 120, it breaks it down by section. And the section we're looking for, it's called Article, I want to say Article 5, let me check. Yeah, Article 5, Investigating Committees. State officer upon request to furnish data and information to legislative committees or commissions. I believe that's it. I could really embarrass myself here if it is not, but I believe this is it. So let's just see what pops up here. So it's 120-19 something or other. The wrong one. Okay, this is ugly. That's what I get for not rehearsing this more, with apologies. Committee activity, there it is. I was off, I was close. 120-19.2, Article 5A, that's under committee activity. 19.2 says they can look at stuff. I'm going to read to you the law here a little bit. It says invitations to witnesses when hearings and examinations held. And we have the wonderful word subpoena. Cut right to paragraph C. It says a subpoena for the purpose of obtaining testimony of a witness may be issued by the chairman of a committee upon authorization of the Speaker of the House or the Speaker pro tempore of the House or House committees, and the President of the Senate or the President pro tempore of the Senate or Senate committee. So I'm going to paraphrase this. If it's the House, either the number one or the number two people in charge of the House would have to sign off on it. And if it's the Senate, the same day, or it's either the Senate President, who's obviously the governor, or the Senate pro tempore, which is for all intents and purposes, the Speaker of the Senate. It's Bill Berger, the head of the Senate. Right now, the committee has to take a vote, and then they can subpoena. It says a subpoena for the purpose of obtaining the testimony of a witness before a joint committee. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. The subpoena shall be signed by the committee chairman and either the Speaker or the Speaker pro tempore, or the President pro tempore. I'm paraphrasing. And the subpoena shall also clearly designate the date, time, and place at which the witness's presence is required. Any witness shall have 5 days notice of hearing unless waived by the witness, and subpoenas may be served by a member of the General Assembly, Special Police, the State Bureau of Investigations, State Highway Patrol. This is a law enforcement grade subpoena, just saying. Let's see, and then what else to say about it? May be served in a manner provided by service of subpoenas under North Carolina, under the court for civil procedure rules. Let's see. Now that's section that talks about subpoena itself, 19.2, and 19.4. We go into the failure to respond, as in what we got here is a failure to communicate. 19.4 says failure to respond to subpoena or refusal to testify punishable as contempt. It says any person who without good cause fails to obey a subpoena which was served upon him or fails or refuses to testify shall be deemed to be in contempt of the committee and shall be punished as in the case of a civil contempt under the procedures set out in subsection B. This is civil, by the way, it is not criminal, so I'm going to skip over the criminal stuff. Let's see, to B, any person whose action in this immediate presence of the committee directly tends to disrupt proceedings may also be punished, as in the case of civil contempt under the subsection. And it says, if by majority vote of the committee, the committee deems that any person is in contempt under the provision of subsection A, which I just read to you, the committee shall file a complaint signed by the chairman in the General Court of Justice Superior Court Division, requesting that the court issue an order directing that the person appear within a reasonable time and show good cause why he should not be held in contempt of the committee for its proceedings. If the person does not establish good cause, the court shall punish the person in accordance with the provisions of, and it names two provisions. One is civil law and one is criminal. Now, of course, there's some loopholes in here. It says without good cause. Now, yesterday, the battle was begun by our state legislature saying, we want to see the machines, and they drew out of a hat and drew Durham County. And I looked at that and I laughed. I mean, here literally, as he was reaching into the hat to draw, I was in the room and I was filming it, and I'll show you the film later, but I was filming it going, in my heart, I was going, please let it be Durham, please let it be Durham, please let it be Durham. Let it be Durham County, well, please. So the legislator, I'm drawing a blank. Oh my word. I want to say Bobby Haydick, but Bobby Haydick was standing beside him. Jeff McNeely, the legislator from Iredell County, Jeff McNeely, was, he drew the name out of the hat, and lo and behold, it was Durham. Now, I will say a couple of things about this. As soon as I heard Durham, I started laughing because I thought, wow, okay, what are the odds of this happening? The odds are exactly 100. There's 100 counties in North Carolina. So what are my conclusions? Either God answered my prayers or Jeff McNeely is a magician. So supernatural one way or the other. Either he's magic or God just said, yeah, Durham, your days are up. Now I got to talk about Durham. Durham is a very interesting county. If you've heard me before go off on my rant about Durham, you'll go, oh, Jay, here he goes again. Grandpa's going off on his rant about Durham. 2016, Durham County in the primary, an individual, I won't name him because I don't remember his name, but if you want to look at it, just Google the term and maybe I'll have a link to it when we get to that point. Anyway, I need to take a water break. I want to warn you, this could be a trigger warning for some people out there. So don't be alarmed and try not to lose your mind, but I'm going to take a water break. And I just wanted to warn you. Okay. If you want to look back at the screen now, the trigger warning is over. I won't do that again without warning. Durham, in the spring of 2016, had a primary. And I don't know how he did it because he pled guilty, and I can't get a hold of any transcripts that would actually lay it out because the transcripts are pretty much procedural. Okay, you pled guilty, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to see what happened. Hey, Jeff, you're a lawmaker. You could, if you're watching, you could actually do what they call a legislative privilege and ask for it. I'd like to see those working notes that they had in the investigation because it was a grand jury proceeding on it. And what happened was they decided that one individual was either directly or caused others to fabricate 1,900 ballots or to somehow tabulate 1,900 illegal ballots. One individual, 1,900. That was an employee in the Durham County Board of Elections who did that. And of course, the powers that be went after that individual, and the grand jury trial ensued. And by the time it was all over, That guy got convicted and they slapped him on the wrist and said, don't do it again. And by the way, you got a misdemeanor against you, 1,900 ballots illegal, and it wasn't a felony because they let it down or something. Who knows? This is just your classic prosecutors. It makes you wonder, are these guys crooked? Because it would have been really instructive to have a trial and find out what he did, how he did it, so we can prevent it from happening in the future. Instead, it was all decided with monsters in the hallway whispering suspiciously, as my son says. They were lawyers behind closed doors figured this out, what they were going to do to deal with it. Humana, nothing to see here. But the headlines were clear. This individual got convicted, and he had, we're going to throw the book at him, and 6 months in jail, suspended, pending probation, and all this garbage. So anyway, he got off. But the fact was, something bad happened in Durham County, Durham, in the spring semester of our elections that year, 2016. Now, as you recall, maybe you won't, but okay, they dealt with that. Michael Perry, the director of elections over there, according to news articles, he was medically off right then and took, so he was not available for comment. And then next time I ran into Michael was at a challenge hearing that was a blast. It was one that old Bart Goswick did over in Durham County. That was a hoot and a holler, and I'll have to tell you about it some other day. But it was a great challenge hearing that really exposed the left and Anita Earls and these illegal immigrants who were voting and all this kind of thing. It was just really interesting. Not that she was an illegal immigrant, never mind, but it was an illegal vote. It was something skeevy about it. Bart he was my kind of man, throwing a challenge into it. So Michael Perry's at that challenge hearing. He's, hey Jay, how you doing? I said, Michael, how are you? Said, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? He says, I'm retired. He's medically retired. So Michael medically retired after this 2016 spring incident. So they had somebody else running the elections in November. That's my point to that, is Michael was no longer there. So you can't pin this on the director of elections because he wasn't there. But the corruption was within the system. And I'm telling you, this is something I've tried to avoid talking about because it's so dark. But I'll show you my proof on this. And if you came to our boot camp in Keene especially, we showed it that afternoon. And then I think in Raleigh and in Durham, we actually showed that part of the evidence earlier. Because election employees can behave badly enough to do anything pernicious. They can do that. We know it's true. I mean, this is settled science. It is true that election employees can be corrupt and they can cheat and they can cause things to happen. They can even break the law and they can get away with it unless somebody calls them out on it. That's our problem. And then if the person who calls them out happens to be an employee, it could go either way. In the case of that Durham guy, apparently there were so many people involved in it that they couldn't cover it up and they went ahead and prosecuted him. In the case of Raleigh, with a voter who behaved badly, not Raleigh, but Wake County, they just they fired the poll worker who tried to pursue it, and they blackballed her from any future employment. Even after Sherry Poucher retired and Gary Sims took over, they still blackballed that individual from working in the election. So each county deals with fraud in their own way. But if you're an employee, we'll cover this another day too, but employees have limited rights in what they can do, and that's a whole nother rabbit trail. What is my point here? Okay, that was Durham. So then in Durham, November, the funny thing happened. They had a glitch. I think I went over this just a couple of days ago. They had a glitch in the morning that caused some poll books to fail and some logistical errors, and they wound up having to go to a judge and get a judge to agree to let Durham leave a couple of precincts open 26 minutes later. And as I told you recently, talking, because I focus group a lot of precinct leadership right after that. And some of them were at those closed at the precincts that were delayed, had to stay open longer. There were not a single voter that came in during that 26 minutes, but no worries, because what that gave Durham County was a plausible excuse to be the last county to report for that year. And lo and behold, they were. And lo and behold, after they did, the state auditor the attorney general and the governor, all those races all flipped after Durham being the last county. Everybody was in, all the final scores were settled, and Durham said, yeah. And they found 94,000 ballots that they somehow not counted. Oh, we didn't realize those ballots were not tabulated. So when they counted them, lo and behold, the McCrory was no longer, he was cruising in to be reelected, and suddenly he wasn't. And then not Forrest, the attorney general, Josh Stein, lucky guy too. The results were flipped for his race, and so the Democrat once again took the attorney general spot, which has always been the case since 1896. Just saying, that's 1896, not 1996. North Carolina's never elected a Republican attorney general. I'm gonna keep saying that till you could say it in your sleep. We've never elected a Republican attorney general, no matter the election. Even when Trump, when Reagan, red wave elections in '94, we had a red wave election, but that was not an attorney general year. That would have been '96. That was Bob Dole, so there probably wasn't a whole lot of energy in the Republican Party that year. But in 2000, George W. Bush, Republicans did well across the country. But the attorney general, gosh darn, the lucky Democrats have always had their attorney general win for 100 minimum of 118 years, maybe longer. I haven't checked back before 1896. But the Jim Crow South got in there, and the KKK and the Democrats worked together to control the Jim Crow South, and they've kept their attorney general even after the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Even after that, the Democrats have always managed to hold on to that one seat, even though they've lost the governorship at times. They've lost the state auditor at times. They've always held on to that chief prosecuting job. They're lucky guys. So Durham County flips those races at 11:45 p.m. when they find 94,000 ballots that have not been counted, and they count them. Now they have a perfectly plausible excuse for it, and the Governor McCrory, demanded a recount, and they stalled and fought and fought, litigated, and finally the governor got what he wanted. They recounted the 94,000 ballots. So this is part of the problem with recounts, is that once I'm not saying anyone corrupted ballots, but you had to just shrug your shoulders and go, well, I guess McCrory lost. When really it was more like Spock in the reboot of the Star Trek series, the young Spock, when they were trying to figure out how the Captain Kirk, wasn't the captain at the time, but how Kirk thwarted the Kobayashi Maru. Now you know I'm a geek, but they want to know, how did he do it? And they looked at Spock, the smartest guy in the room, and said, Spock, how did he do it? And Spock said, I don't know. Pissed, because he knew that Kirk had done it, but he just didn't know how. So he hated Kirk. It was just some friction in the reboot that was really entertaining, because that guy's a crook. I don't know how he did it, but I know he did it. And that's kind of the way a lot of us felt, myself included, after the 2016 Durham incident. And in order to believe that election was rigged from the inside, you had to believe that A, election officials are corrupt, and B, there's a lot of them that are corrupt, because it would have taken something magical. I mean, let's face it, when you hand your ballot to that machine to be tabulated, you're sticking your ballot into a black box. And unless you can take all the ballots for that precinct and count them yourself, or have a citizen committee count them yourselves, you don't really know what happened, because they can do anything they want to do. They close the doors, they have all the ballots over here, all these blank ballots right there. You just don't know. It's just like one giant black box. Now, you can accuse me of undermining the public trust and electoral system by pointing this out, but I'm saying the way to restore it is to put more transparency in. So any precinct with the right number of people, they could walk in at the closing of the precinct, say, we want to count these ballots, every single one of them, want to hand recount them, like they do with New Hampshire. They do a lot of hand-eye recounts there. It's not that hard. They use an opaque projector, they put the ballot up there, and all the interested parties will just tabulate whichever race they're looking at, and an hour or two later, they're done. And it's okay, that's not admissible in court. No, it isn't, but it'll give you a rough shot as to whether the announced results of that precinct match the results that actually showed up on the ballot. That's the level of transparency we need. Do we have that? No, we don't. Instead it's nope, those are our ballots. They have confidential information on it, and you can't see them because you're not part of our team. And this is the problem with the legislature trying to fight the Board of Elections. They're saying, hey, lawmakers, pound sand, or whatever that means in Italy, or this, or well, this, depending on which language you're in. Sorry, I just flipped you off at about 5 different languages, and I apologize. But the point is, they're saying no. And Karen, bless her heart, Bell, already said no once before, and I comment on that. If you want to find it, you go to our website. It's Karen said no. That's the headline on that website. Now, where are we at next? I need to show you some correspondence. Because yesterday, after McNeely and gang, unfortunately, Keith Kidwell, it's public knowledge that his wife has had a rough go at it right now. Her health is not so good. And please pray for Keith Kidwell's better half, if you will. Mrs. Kidwell caused Keith to be detained, unable to be at this press conference yesterday. This is his caucus, and he wasn't there. If you don't know what all that's about, think of like Jim Jordan and the Freedom Caucus in Washington, D.C. You get the idea of what Kidwell's doing. All right, so yesterday, the chief disinformation officer at the State Board of Elections, an affable dude named Patrick Gannon, wrote an email out to a lot of people, including directors of the boards of elections across the state. They wrote a letter to an email with a letter they'd sent to the Kidwell caucus, if you will, the Freedom Caucus. I'm going to read the overview of it. I'll give you the longer letter up on the after we get this posted on our website at voterintegrityproject.com. I'm not going to read you the whole letter because it's like 3 pages. But you'll get the rough idea here, and then we'll critique this, and then we'll get out of here for the day and just tell you what's next. All right, let's see. Sorry about all the glare. It's hard to control that. Try different things. Maybe that's better, maybe not. All right, it says, this is to the directors of elections across the state. It says, see the attached July 7th letter to Representative Kidwell, and the statement below from Karen Brinson Bell, Executive Director of the State Board of Elections. It says, unauthorized individuals who are not elections professionals have no authority to open and inspect voting equipment. Federal election security officials warn against any manipulation of voting systems, as that increases the risk of accidental or intentional damage, manipulation, or theft of assets and data. Any machine that is tampered with would have to be decertified and placed. Durham County is still canvassing from the October municipal election, and voting has begun for the November elections. North Carolina General Statute 163, blah, 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 requires voting systems to remain secure throughout the period voting is being conducted. Durham County must see that process through without disruption. It is extremely disheartening when elected officials do not trust the process that elected them, nor the thousands of bipartisan election officials and poll workers who ensure North Carolina's elections are fair and secure. Never mind, I'll go back. The state board has received no credible evidence that the certified results are not accurate, and elected officials from both sides of the aisle have stated that the 2020 general election in North Carolina was conducted fairly. In North Carolina, post-election audits and recounts proved election results were accurate. As documented in publications across the country, this type of stunt puts the safety of election officials at risk. Okay, that's a short way of saying the much longer letter. In short, Karen said, you get the idea. Yeah, you get the idea. Karen said, no, I'm flipping you off this time. Not only no, but no way. No, never, no. Okay, but let's look at this. We have a big problem because your legislature empowered these people to do their jobs. And your legislature has a God-given, well, if consider the Constitution is from God, a God-given right, because the Constitution says it, and this is a bad idea executed poorly, would be for me to pull out a copy of the Constitution. I'm not sure I could do that this quickly. Yeah, I won't do it. Article 1, I believe it is. It talks about, I think it's Article 1, Section 4, but I could be wrong. They have the right to, they set the time and place and manner of elections. It is their job, and the courts have never, as much as the courts have wanted to take control of it, they've never succeeded to that level of usurping authority of that branch of government. Although the courts do, they kick around everybody because it's a good strategy, and that's what the left did. They subverted the courts, and now they can subvert our entire country through the courts. You don't believe me, just look at Madison Murray O'Hara's lawsuit, getting rid of prayer in public schools. The courts are where the action is, as you know. So that's where this is headed. But the bottom line to it here, there's many bottom lines. I want to go through this letter a little bit. Unauthorized individuals. Okay, who is unauthorized? So the people who paid for the elections and authorized the money for Karen, bless your heart, Bell, to get her job and set up her little empire over at the State Board of Elections. She is authorized, but nobody else is over there in the house that paid their bills. That's like your daddy giving you keys to the car, and then and your daughter, and then your dad says, I need to check in the trunk before you go and make sure you're not taking any alcohol with you or got any boys stuck in the trunk. And she goes, you're not authorized. I have the keys. And you don't. You're not authorized. That's little Karen. But she's taking orders from a really shady character. I think Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars. That would be Gary Bartlett, but that's a whole another story for a whole another day. Unauthorized individuals who are not elections professionals have no authority to open and inspect voting equipment. Says little Bell. Federal election security officials warn against any manipulation of voting systems. Well, yeah, that's reasonable. Any manipulation would be a bad thing. If you listen carefully, and I will definitely, Lord willing, I will have the recording of the entire proceeding yesterday. They're not looking to manipulate anything. They're looking to inspect this equipment with ES&S employees standing by. They can just show them looking at the equipment, watching it. Who knows, maybe even the legislature won't even touch the equipment. They'll just say, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, pull this out, I want to see what's over there. What they're looking for is motives. Now, what Karen is telling them is this model of the ES&S DS200 does not have motives. We noticed in her communication with Representative Cleveland when this whole brouhaha started that Karen said, according to ES&S. Well, that's not exactly a rousing, believable statement when you're telling me there are no modems in there, according to ES&S. So you're not really warranting that statement. So she, in her 3-page letter she wrote to them, she is a little stronger in it this time. Okay, now let's see what happens. Authorizing, okay, then they warn against any manipulation of machines that as that increases the risk of accidental or intentional damage, blah, blah, blah. We agree, we all agree. No manipulation of the machine. Can we inspect it? Can we dismantle it and look at it, put it back together right there with adult supervision? Is that manipulation? If the adult, the guy who designed the machine, is responsible for it, well, and maybe we'll videotape it. Is that manipulation? I would argue no, it is not. And what Jeff said yesterday, Representative McNeely said, hey, let ES&S recertify it right there on the spot. And it sounded like he got a deal with ES&S to do that, but in Karen's longer letter, she actually called him a liar on that point. Okay, she says, second paragraph, Durham County is still canvassing from the October municipal election and voting has begun for the November elections. And the law requires voting systems to remain secure throughout the period voting is being conducted. Okay, we're talking about the DS200 machine. That's a precinct tabulator. Okay, the precinct elections for the primary are over with. The November elections are presumably what's next in Durham. Yeah, I mean, doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure that out. Those machines are not going to be used in that precinct until election day in November. So, all right, they remain secure throughout the period of voting. It's implying that they're going to take a machine that we're using this machine today, and you can't have it. Instead, they're going, you can't have it because the elections have started. The elections are always going on. They're always busy. They're always finding an excuse. There's a narrow window in which they could maybe do it because there's a lot of work. Anybody, I'm telling you, if you think that election officials only work once every 2 years for an election, you're going to make yourself look stupid if you go out saying that, because it's the biggest joke in the world. They have a steady tempo of activities they have to do, and I'm going to refer you back to the drawing. If I had my act together, I would already have it handy, and now I'm trying to find the book right here. Okay, I apologize because the way I set the camera up today, we're backwards on this, but I'll just show you the diagram. You might remember that diagram. There's a long cycle of things that are. I just realized I cheated the people in the other meeting, and this will not be a backwards diagram. It's called the electoral cycle, and because of that electoral cycle, Karen's gang, they're always busy. They always have something to do. They can always make an excuse not to give you what you want. They just tell you what they're doing now, and they go, "We're not giving you that until we're ready to do it because we don't have time right now." Let alone that they got a full-time disinformation officer with a staff who can give you information, and they have these things called lawyers who can come up with excuses why you can't have it. The bottom line is, their disinformation team is not out there. They're not out there counting ballots. They're not out there canvassing. They're sitting around waiting for the operators to finish their little operations. So they could do this. They could do two things at once. Okay, then she says, I like this virtue signaling. It's extremely disheartening when elected officials do not trust the process that elected them. They stop there. We allowed you into your office because we're the ones who declared you the winner. The Bish, remember that. Karen, they got the power. They really do. What they don't appreciate is somebody looking over their shoulder. They hate that. I mean, any child hates that, especially when the child is cheating or doing something wrong. They really hate it then. So Karen, it's extremely disheartening. Let's see, nor the thousands of bipartisan election officials and poll workers who ensure North Carolina's elections are fair and secure. Okay, don't trigger Josie on the word fair. If those of you who know Josie is, say fair around her and watch her. It's so funny. Don't tell me, I'm paraphrasing Josie. She said, don't tell me about fair. I hate that word. I hate that word. I said, what do you mean? She had just like, oh, wow. Okay, bottom line is fair is like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. Or ask any 4-year-old what fair is. 4-year-old will say, I get Sissy's toy. I get little brother's toy. That's what fair is. Fair is, I get what I want. And the question is, do both sides agree? Are both sides okay with what the final score was? Well, yeah, the leadership, the people who got elected, they're fine. They're like, yeah, hey, I'm the House Majority Leader. I'm fine with it. I'm the governor. I'm fine with it. I'm the Senate leader. I'm fine with it. Yeah, they're all happy with it. And the guys who won, they're all like, hey, this will work for me. Who's not fine with it? Usually it's the people who lose, okay, I'll get it. And is it a sore loser effect? Is it, okay, they're just sore losers. And that's what the media is saying, that the orange man is just a sore loser. Okay. My question is, for somebody who is these elected officials who do not trust the process that elected them, it's not the process, it's the people running the process. And this is something you must never, ever, never, ever forget. It is not the government. It is not the Board of Elections. It is not the poll worker, the elected officials from both sides, the election officials. It is individual human beings who are manipulating ballots and getting us to the final answer. What we all find extremely troublesome is that they're not letting people see how they do it. They cheat 1,000 ways, or they don't cheat at all. We don't know. All we do know is they conveniently have machines that have proprietary information. So we can't show you anything about it. We can't show you the source code because it's proprietary. This company has theirs, that company has theirs, and this is proprietary. There's this thing called OASIS EML, election markup language. I'm not sure. OASIS EML. Google that term, OASIS EML, and you'll see you don't have to have this super secret, super expensive proprietary equipment. You could have stuff that I could bring in another vendor's machines and verify everything you did. That could be, but no, we have this, and it's all authorized by the EAC, by the federal government. Hey, how many of you trust everything come out of Washington? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? Okay, right. No, they're so secretive. They're their own worst enemy. So their answers now are to silence anybody who questions them, or to just say, all right, you want it more transparent. Let's work together and figure out how to do that. So the interim step in us clawing back all this power is for the legislature to claw back their authority over these election people. Now that's going to take litigation. I showed you there's some, okay, let me finish this up. The state board, let me finish this. The state board has received no credible evidence that the certified results are not accurate. Well, of course you received no credible evidence, just like you received no credible evidence of any kind of election fraud in Robeson County in 2018, or in House District 103 in Mecklenburg County in 2018. But you've received credible evidence from Bladen County. And then as this trial advances forward from McRae Dallas, you'll see what that credible evidence was. It was hearsay, it was lies, it was one guy, he lied. He just flat out lied, and demonstrable lies. A guy in that county lied to trigger the whole thing. But that was credible evidence. But the several hundred, I think 1,800, 1,900, don't quote me on the number, of absentee ballot request forms that were just dumped in one day at the Robeson County Board of Elections. That wasn't credible evidence. Nor was the complaints of people going door to door telling people they'd been removed from the voter roll, did they want to re-register? That wasn't credible evidence. That was in Robeson County, and Robeson was Democrat, controlled by Josh Malcolm, and that was okay. That wasn't credible. But in Bladen, a Republican won. So that was credible evidence. So these people have zero credibility when it comes to, they do not get to determine what credible is. This is the problem, is right now they do. Right now, the way they're structured, their entire investigative division is answerable to Karen Bless Your Heart Bell. So that's kind of a problem. And we've been crying and screaming with the legislature to fix that problem for several years now, that the investigative division should be taken away from the Board of Elections and put somewhere else that's not accountable, that's not in the same chop chain. And I find myself in alignment with Major Dave, my good friend, and we should take that group and put them under the authority of the legislature. And I would add some more people to that group, and I'd be happy to sit down and discuss which ones and where the funding would come from. But that's ultimately, you've got to break up that empire, that black box of the people who count the votes being the same people who announce the winners. They receive the ballots, they count the votes, and they announce the winners, and it's all done in darkness. Then they go to the board and tell them a few things, and that's the public oversight. And the rest of them are employees. They're government employees, and they live and die. Their careers live and die on how well they satisfy their bosses. And the only people that actually are accountable is the directors. They're accountable to the political entity. the board of elections. In each county, it's a majority board by the governor's party, ostensibly, even though when Corey was in there were some counties that had even now, some of the Republicans on the board are more beholden to the director of elections or to the Democrat Party, even though they have an R behind their name and they're appointed by ours. This is a problem with corruption, is that it knows no party bounds. So more and more transparency has to be done where everything can be seen out in the open if we're ever gonna have open and honest elections again in the United States of America. So what the legislature is doing today, or yesterday, they started it. I tried to get a hold of McNeely, but I ran out of time and they haven't responded yet. I don't fault them at all. They, the next move, the ball's in their court. Karen again said no with a little more emphasis this time. And the question goes back to the statutes. If you want to look them up, it's NCGS 120-19.2 and 19.4. You take a look at those and you'll see what legal authority they have, or just come over to our website a little later today and you'll see it there, because it's I'll definitely have these linked, because this is where they get their authority. But even there, they're going to be fighting over words with without good cause fails to obey the subpoena. And they have. So who decides that? Well, that'll be a judge who'll say, well, I don't know. Karen made a good excuse. I think she has good cause to say screw off until after the November elections. Okay, that's fine. Then what happens? Well, here's an idea, state Republican Party. Here's an idea, or whatever you are, the legislature. Here's an idea. You don't have the money to buy machines. I get it. They're like $5,000 a piece, and Durham probably has 80 or 90. I don't know how many precincts they have. I should know that. It's probably well over 100, but let's just say 100. Why don't you take some real authority and put those machines over into counties where there's no elections going on this year? Borrow machines from other counties. That's what Durham would do if they suddenly had a very unlucky fire, say, that burned down their equipment warehouse. If they had that kind of unlucky fire, and well, gee, you can't have them now. Now you may think that's kooky, but that did actually happen in Harris County, Texas, in 2010, just a few weeks after True the Vote, Catherine Engelbrecht's group out of Houston, did the one thing they do well, which is they look after Texas elections. And when they were focused on that, Catherine's group, they found a lot of illegal votes. And as a result of that, they got their DA to hold a press conference and say he was going to get to the bottom of this. And a couple of days later, in a nondescript building in a nondescript part of an industrial section of the county, there was a fire. And according to the New York Times, it was ruled an arson. And gosh darn, that fire destroyed $10 million, which was a lot of money back then. $10 million of election equipment, just like that. Gosh darn, unfortunate for who? Who knows what was in those machines? The fact was, they were so scared after True the Vote hit the ground that arson destroyed the building that had the election machine stored in it. Of course, nobody was ever caught. Round up the usual suspects. So Durham's going to delay this as long as they can, and they'll probably find some judge to get it. This is a constitutional showdown. And to the extent our legislature fights it, hey guys, I'll have your back. To the extent you fight this little black box merchants, with Karen Bell as the titular head of the organization, where really Gary Bartlett is the puppet master. But that's all I know. There's ES&S with their secretive ownership. No one knows who they are. The largest election machine tabulator company in America, and no one knows who owns them. It's secret. It's a private trust per the agreement. And then let's talk about the components inside their machines. We know some of the components are Chinese, and their ES&S chief disinformation officer goes into this whole spin about how, well, there's some minor parts in it. We're not applying for our global supply chain. We're not apologizing for our global supply chain, was his answer. But okay, inquiring minds want to know. Hey, legislature, if you're listening, find out. That's a very valid question. Get the country of origin of every single part in there. you're doing a good job. House Bill 259 that dropped 2 days ago. You're doing a good job. You're on the right path. This is a rare day where I'm applauding the Republicans at the legislature for doing the right thing. Things appear to be good, but they're going to have to fight. And they have to fight hard if they want to win this. They have picked a fight with one of the most powerful entities in our entire constitutional process, and that is this elite little group of people who take your vote and they take it behind a door, they lock the door, and they come back out later and tell you who won. They want to get power back from those people. They need to get power back from those people. They need to create more accountability, not less. More transparency, not less. So this is overall what we're on about. This is what the entire election integrity movement is about. And anyone who is not about that is a fraud and a shyster, and don't give them money because they'll lie to you about other stuff too. They'll waste your money. That's all we're saying. Okay, what's the takeaway? Keep an eye on this. If you want to see the source documents I'm talking about, I'll have them all up on our website later today. And actually, I'm going to stop the recording of the later. Let's see, pause, share. Come on. Apologies. Stop recording.